you guys, it's Nikita Lene back with another video, and today I want to talk to you guys about my assignment here in LA, how things are going, and just some updates, as well as kind of talking to you guys about how I have kind of managed the stress of working as a COVID nurse in the midst of some of the crisis and the craziness that's been going on. So if you're interested, stick around and watch more. I've gotten a lot of emails, text messages, inbox messages, just kind of asking me how things are in LA. Just to kind of catch you guys up, for those of you who don't know, I took a travel assignment working in Los Angeles at one of the smaller, well, I guess it's kind of like a medium-sized hospital in LA in the ICU. And recently the C-19 numbers have gone up significantly in LA, and recently the reports on the news have shown that the ICUs are all at 100% occupancy. So I've gotten a lot of messages from my followers, some friends, some family, just kind of asking how the heck are things going in LA. So I really just wanted to give you guys some quick updates of how things are going, as well as kind of talk to you guys about some of the changes that are happening in my life, and get you guys up to speed. So to answer the question of how things are going in LA, things have really been chaotic. On the news, when they had mentioned that it's 100% bed occupancy for all of the ICUs, that was 100% true, you guys. Our ICU was originally equipped to have 8 beds. We do have an expansion, like 2 additional rooms that can fit 2 people in them. They weren't originally set up to be COVID rooms because they did not originally have like the negative pressure and all of that set up, but our hospital administrators quickly realized we need to set them up. So they set those rooms up, and we were able to expand and add an additional 4 beds. Well, quickly after that, we realized once again, those beds are not going to be enough. We need to expand further. So at our hospital, our administrators decided that they were going to try and extend into the med-surg unit. So the way our med-surg is kind of set up, it's kind of a big square. So as soon as you walk out of the ICU, you can walk straight and that hall is med-surg, or you could take a left and it's med-surg. And what they essentially did was just kind of just spill out into the med-surg floor, the tele unit. They initially started by expanding one room that could fit 4 people, and they turned that into an additional med-surg or an additional ICU room. And then from there, they realized that's once again not enough beds, so they extended even further. They added another room that they turned into an ICU room. And ultimately, when I say they're turning them into ICU rooms, they're adding the monitors so that the patients can be seen on the monitors 24/7. They're adding the negative pressure into the rooms, and trying to set them up to be like as close to a traditional ICU room as possible. But you know, if you've worked med-surg versus working ICU, you know that they're kind of just set up differently. Most of the time when your patients are med-surg, they're meant to be stable. You're not supposed to have to look at them or check on them every 5 minutes. So it is a little bit difficult as far as the setup goes. Sorry about that, but we're trying our best to make it work. You know, you really have no choice but to make it work in these situations. So that's kind of what's going on. So extending that brought us from the original 8 beds, gave us an additional 4 beds, and then a 4 on top of that, 4 on top of that, and still with all of those rooms, we were at full capacity. This would be 2 weeks ago. We were at full capacity, you guys, and it was getting sticky. It was very stressful. I feel like there were so many shifts where we came in and every bed was full. Not every patient was on a ventilator, but most of our patients were on ventilators. And if they're on ventilators, you know they're sedated, so they're on drips. So every single one of these patients is a handful high acuity patient. There were times, plenty of shifts where I came in where the shift supervisor was working on the floor and working as a shift supervisor. So they're taking care of 2 or 3 patients. There were our nurse managers who don't even usually work the floor. They are working the floors with us because we're short nurses. And so it's nothing to walk into work and see the supervisor is supervising, shift supervisors, doing supervisor stuff on top of taking care of 2 patients. And then you have the nurse manager who's working the floor with us, and they may have 2 patients. And everybody has their 2 patients. Sometimes we, have been stretched to where we have to take a 3rd patient, but they try their best to give you like a patient who's a little bit lower acuity, like the most stable patient, the most stable 3rd option if they have to give a 3rd patient, and they try their best to give it to nurses who feel like they can handle it, so that they are not overwhelming nurses that feel like they cannot handle it. So it's been a lot, you guys. I would say that one of the hardest things is that you just don't know what you're going to walk into when you walk into a shift. You really just have to be ready and prepared to take whatever's thrown at you, because some shifts are really good where you're like, wow, both of my patients were stable all shift long. I may have had a lot of medications, or I may have had a lot to do, but both of my patients are stable. But there's a plenty of shifts that I've walked in, and I've been running from the second I walk in the door until an hour and a half after I'm supposed to leave, because I'm still at work, still playing catch up, still trying to make sure I charted everything, and it's a lot. It's a lot. We have started what's called group care. So we have nurses from other units that are coming into the ICU to help us because we just don't have enough ICU nurses. And when I say we, I mean there are travel nurses, there are per diem nurses, and we still don't have enough nurses on top of, the normal staff that works there. So we have nurses that are coming to work from the PACU, from the ED, from tele-unit, med-surg, and we have techs that are coming in from those units as well that are helping us. And honestly, it's a blessing to be able to do this, because it's already chaotic. To know that you have all of this chaos going on and to not have help, it sucks so bad. So any little thing that they're able to do we're so grateful for it. We understand that a lot of the nurses from the other units are not used to some of the stuff that we do in the ICU, so we're very accommodating to that, and we just kind of use them for whatever skill they're able to help us with. For the most part, most nurses, if you're a nurse, you know how to give meds. So I may say, can you help me with my 9 o'clock meds? While I do, this thing that you may not be trained in doing. And we kind of try and balance it out like that. Another capacity that we've used is if we have one of the rooms that has 4 patients in it, we may say, okay, the PACU nurse is going to be taking care of 2 patients, and then the ICU nurse is in there, and they do group care together. So that way, those 2 nurses are responsible for these 4 patients, but if the PACU nurse, needs help and doesn't understand, or doesn't, isn't used to doing something, doesn't feel comfortable doing something, the ICU nurse is right there, and they work together. So there's a lot of delegation that comes along with that. There's a lot of teaching that comes along with that. You have to really communicate well. You have to be able to voice, okay, this is what I feel comfortable with, this is what I don't feel comfortable with. And you just really have to work as a team, because now it's at a point where everybody kind of feels like a travel nurse. You're working in a unit that you're not used to, with people that you're not used to working with, but we're all working together to make it happen. So I will say I'm exceptionally grateful for all of those nurses that have come to the ICU to help us. It's been a great experience. It's been great meeting new people, working with new people, and it's been great to see the teamwork of everybody coming together to get shit done. And so I'm very grateful for that. One of the other things I will tell you that has been kind of stressful is when you are working on taking care of ICU patients on the med-surg floor, because you're away from the ICU, and truly the rooms are not set up like traditional ICU rooms. So our hospital has given us this system where we have iPads that are kind of pointed at each patient, and we connect through our iPhones, so we're able to see our patients 24/7 on our little iPhone screen, kind of like FaceTiming essentially is what it is. It can get a little stressful at times because the room's not set up like a traditional ICU room where there's nothing but like a glass panel and I can see everything going on at every minute. It does make it a little bit stressful. Sometimes you're sitting, we're sitting literally in the hall outside of the room. So sometimes we hear like a monitor going off, or we hear a vent alarm or something going off, and we're looking at our phones trying to figure out which patient it is, what's going on, trying to look through the window. But you know, that in itself has been a little bit stressful. Now, instead of having just one cell phone, I have to have 3 phones. I have one to look at each of my patients, and then a third one that I can use for my communication purposes, to communicate with the doctors and other nurses and things like that. So that in itself is a little bit stressful, having to maintain 3 phones and pay attention to our patients through this iPhone, being away from the unit. So we're able to use the MedSurg Pyxis for like basic medications, but their Pyxis is not going to have everything that we need. So there's a lot of running back and forth to the ICU for things that you're only going to find in the ICU. Like if I have a patient who's on propofol, who's on Versed, like I'm not going to find that in the MedSurg Pyxis, so I have to run all the way back to the ICU. So I've definitely got my steps in these last couple of weeks, running back and forth between the ICU for different things, for different meds, and it's been a different level of stress is what I will say. The difference in my assignment from when I first got to LA till now, it seems almost like a completely different hospital. When I first got there, I'm not gonna lie, I texted my best friend and she kind of asked me like, how's the ICU there? And I texted her, I was like, this is kind of like cake. Like I looked around and I was like, it kind of seems like most of these patients are kind of like step down patients. And I think at the time there was literally like 1 patient on a vent, maybe 2 patients on a vent. I don't think I even saw a bottle of propofol until like my 2nd or 3rd week there. I was like, oh, this is cake, this is gonna be easy. But when I tell you the numbers, if the COVID numbers in LA skyrocketed, and they ended up shutting the city down. I think it was probably like my 3rd or 4th week here. They shut everything down. So the assignment changed drastically, you guys. Everything from the patient acuity and the amount of admissions we were getting calls when our ICU was completely full, and the ED is like, look, we have 3 patients that we need to send to you, and we're like, we have no beds to put these patients in or nurses to take care of them. And a lot of the patients would just have to wait patiently because they would have to call around the city of LA to find out which hospitals had ICU beds. That's a different kind of stress. And every single night the shift supervisor is like literally looking at the acuity of our patients, trying to figure out who can be moved down to the step down unit, who could be moved to the floor, to MedSurg or to tele unit, if at all. You know, you don't want to have to move COVID patients, but sometimes you have, you know, if they are no longer on drips, or they're no longer on the vent, or some of our patients were never on the vent to begin with, you really just have to look at their acuity and make a decision of whether they can be moved or not. And so there was a lot of that going on every single shift because we needed beds. We just didn't have enough beds. And if we had enough beds, if we found a bed by some miracle, sometimes we wouldn't have enough nurses. And so I would definitely say that things have escalated to a new level when it comes to LA and the COVID numbers. But at the same time, it's also very frustrating because I would be out and about in LA and you see the same complacency that you see kind of across the country. Like a lot of people are still not wearing their mask. A lot of people are still just doing dumb stuff and they don't take it serious. So that was definitely interesting to see. And you have these exhausting shifts where you're struggling all night long to keep this patient alive. And so it's just frustrating. It's very frustrating as nurses. As healthcare providers, we are physically exhausted. We are almost an entire year into this pandemic, and we are exhausted. We're freaking tired. We're being overworked, and there's a lot of chaos. Every single shift is chaos. And then you just go out into the real world, and people are still going to hookah lounges and still going to the club and still partying and still doing just dumb stuff. And so it's very frustrating. It's very exhausting. That's what I will say about that. So next, I kind of want to talk about some of the things that I do as a nurse that have really helped me to kind of control my anxiety and the feeling of overwhelm, and just kind of control what I can control working in this stressful environment. So one of the main things that I do before I come into my shift is I have to get my mind right, you guys. I have a podcast that I listen to. The person who runs the podcast, his name is Rob Dial, and he does a lot of positivity, a lot of focusing on your goals, your mission, different things like that. So I love listening to his podcast while I get ready for work. So that is my pre-shift routine. I always listen to his podcast. They're very short, sweet, and to the point. So I always listen to his podcast while I'm getting ready for work. So next up, I will say, is my routine. As a nurse, I have a pre-shift routine. I have a that's what I do before I get to work. I have my start of shift routine, what I do when I get to work, and it sets me up for success for my 12-hour shift. And those things include, like, I change my scrubs, I clean my work area, my computer on wheels, I make sure I get my phone, I get logged in and I clean my phone, I set up a nice clear area of where I'm going to put my PPE, and I make sure that area is clean, as well as I like to listen to music while I do my charting. So I may already set up either music or my podcast on my phone of what I want to listen to, so that when I get the beginning of my shift going and I'm ready to sit down, all I have to do is kind of pop my headphone in, and it's like a sigh of relief. Like, okay, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna chart for however long I can chart before I'm interrupted. Sometimes that's like 5 minutes, sometimes it's like a whole 30 minutes of wow, I was able to get stuff done. But that is kind of one thing that helps to get my mind away from the stress, kind of help to lower my anxiety while I'm in such a stressful environment. Especially, like I said, when we're working on the med-surg floor, we are literally in the hall. So it's very crowded, it's very congested, there's a lot of people, there's crash carts, there's supplies. It's very high stress to me and high anxiety. So the best way that I know how to lower my anxiety is to control what I can control, which is my routine and my patient care, the care that I take of my patients, as well as listening to music that's going to kind of lower my anxiety. So I make sure that I bring my headphones with me. I make sure I already preset what I want to listen to in my mind. Like if I have my certain podcast I want to listen to, or my certain Pandora station, I already have that ready in my mind. Like, I can't wait to sit down and chart and listen to the blah 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 station. Like, that is kind of like something to look forward to 2-3 hours into my shift, whenever I'm able to sit down and do that. So one of the other things that I did just mention that really helps me is having a routine. I have a set routine of what I like to do, and I do it in a specific order. It helps me to make sure that I don't miss anything, I don't forget to do something, and it's kind of like a mental checklist. Additionally, when I do take report, I do make a small checklist on the bottom of my report sheet of things that I do need to do for my patient, so I don't forget those things. Like if I need to take a urine sample, or if I have labs due in the morning, I'll write those labs down. If I need to do wound care, I'll put that on there. Whatever it is I need to do, it's a short little checklist so that I have peace of mind at the end of my shift that I did everything that I was supposed to do. Once again, these are routines and checks and balances that allow me to control what I can control, which is taking care of my patients, as well as making sure that I'm doing my job to the best of my ability, and in order to lower my overall stress level. Okay, so what else do I do? Oh, so the last thing I do have listed here on my list is clustering my care. Now, whenever you're dealing with patients that are in any type of isolation, the best thing you can do is to cluster your care. This is something they teach you in nursing school, but I don't think they really teach you like the level of importance of having to cluster your care, or really how to cluster your care. So, I make sure that when I first come into my shift, I introduce myself to whoever my partner in crime is for the night, okay? So that may be the nurse who's working next to me. That may be the nurse who has the other 2 patients in the same room as my patients. I introduce myself because I'm a travel nurse. 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to know that person. If I do know that person, I've already worked with that person, I may say something quick like, hey, how's it going? You know, how's your night going? How have you been? Haven't seen you in a couple weeks, whatever the case may be. But I kind of also remind them of, hey, we do have 4 COVID patients in this room. It's a tight squeeze in that room. It's going to be a high stress night. Let's cluster our care and let's work together as a team. We're forming an alliance, right? Okay, so that's kind of what I want to talk to them about, and that's me letting them know I cluster my care. If you need my help, I'm here. I'm always a team player. But if you need my help, if you see me while I'm in the room, say, hey, I need your help. Can you help me turn my patients? Can you help me do this? Can you help me do that? Whatever the case may be. This is also me telling them, please don't wait until I walk out of the room and I sit down to chart, and then all of a sudden you want me to come back in the room so we can turn the patient or do something small that you could have asked me to do while we were in the room. A lot of nurses operate like that. They like to be in and out of the room. I'm not going to be in and out for small, minute things. I like to cluster my care because it decreases my exposure, number 1, but it also decreases the stress on me as a nurse, on my patients, on the whole team, right? So I make sure that whoever my partner in crime is for the night knows that I cluster my care. So if you need my help, you need my help. I have no problem doing that, but let's work together as a team to cluster our care. I like to also do what's called the 5 o'clock turn and burn. This is making sure that my patients are clean at the very end of the shift and they're bathed, they have fresh linens and all of that stuff. I do blood sugars, I clean, I turn, we do all of that stuff 5 o'clock. And once again, I let my partner in crime for the night know that. So if they know that they need help turning their patient, or hey, I need to bathe my patient, but I'm going to need your help, 5 o'clock's the time, Betty. 5 o'clock's when we do that, and blood sugars and give the last insulin and all of that stuff. So clustering your care is definitely something that decreases the amount of stress that you have on you, because it is stressful every time you have to go in and out of the room, in and out of a COVID patient room. You already know that there's going to be some times that are unexpected where you have to go in there. So you want to decrease the amount of times that you go in the room, and that's how you do it, by planning your shift out, what you need to get done, and by clustering those tasks and medications and things that you have to do. So it minimizes the amount of times, the scheduled times you have to go in there, because we already know there's going to be unscheduled, unexpected reasons why you're going to have to go in there on top of that. So those are some of the things that I do that kind of help to decrease the amount of stress and anxiety that I have with my shifts. I just try and control what I can control. Everything else, when you're working in the hospital setting, especially right now during a pandemic, you're not going to have control over a lot of things. Like, let's be honest, we walk into chaos every single shift. Every shift is chaos, whether it's your patients that are unstable and crashing, or it's the person who next to you. There's always going to be chaos around you. So you really have to find peace in what you're doing by setting a routine that you feel comfortable with, by clustering your care to decrease the amount of exposure and the amount of stress that's on you, as well as finding something that helps to kind of calm yourself, calm your mind, whether it's listening to music, listening to a podcast, talking to a coworker that you enjoy talking to while you chart, whatever it is that kind of helps to lower your anxiety. You have to find that for yourself, and add it to your routine, add it to your before shift routine, your after shift, your mid shift, whatever works for you, because it's stressful. It's very stressful working working right now through this pandemic. I won't even say on a COVID unit, because every unit is a COVID unit at this point. We're all taking care of COVID patients. Like, there's no more specialty. There's no more this certain nurse and crisis pay. Like, everybody's taking care of COVID patients at this point, and we are deep into this thing. So if you're just now joining us, welcome. Welcome to the fun. We need you. We need your help. But we also need you to be level-headed. We need you to come in here and, you know, come help us, because we're drowning at this point. We're all mentally and physically and spiritually exhausted in this pandemic. So we have to really be there to help one another. But you can't help the people around you if you cannot help yourself. So I really urge you, if you don't already have your own routine or your own stress relievers that you are using, I urge you to find them, to figure them out, to create a routine that's best for you. And to find some type of stress relievers both at work and outside of work that really help you to cope with this in a healthy way. Because unfortunately, I don't think this pandemic is going to end anytime soon. That's the bad news. I don't. It's not something that's we're going to snap our fingers and it's 2021, so now the pandemic's gone. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. So we're going to have to cope. We're going to have to continue to find alternative ways to cope and to work together and to get through this. So I really urge you to find the things that help you physically, mentally, spiritually get through this, because you have to take care of yourself. You just have to. We can't take care of our coworkers and our patients if we don't take care of ourselves. So I appreciate you guys watching once again. I'm just so appreciative of every single one of you. And if you are a nurse, comment down below what type of nurse you are, what's your specialty, and what you do in your daily routine or your work routine that has been helping you to kind of cope with this pandemic and everything that's going on and the stressful environment that you're working in. Thanks again for watching, you guys. Take care.